It is December 17th, 2024. My name is Theodore Ted Kerr, and I am representing Miami AIDS Memorial and Knowledge of AIDS. I'm going to throw it to you to introduce yourself.
I'm Richard Zaldivar. I'm the executive director and the founder of the Wall Las Memorias here in Los Angeles, California.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Richard, for talking to me today. We have a bit of time to talk about memory work and HIV/AIDS. And you just gave your title and the organization that you are the founder of. I wonder if you want to just take us back to the founding. Is that too big of a question?
No, it's fine. Well, back in the summer of 1993, um, I thought about building a wall panel with the Virgin of Guadalupe in the middle and 200 names of people who died of AIDS somewhere in Los Angeles. And I shared the idea, and the idea grew. And so within 3 months, I had an architectural design that was donated, and for an AIDS monument. And it was pretty awesome because we were not a nonprofit. It was just my idea. It was my dream, and all of a sudden things started coming together. And my very good friend, who was a Catholic priest, he has long since died, was a huge supporter. And so when on December 1st, which was World AIDS Day, um, I we launched the organization as a nonprofit in order to build an AIDS monument. Prior to that, though, the idea to and the dream to build a monument was pretty huge, and we had a large nonprofit who tried to steal the idea away from me, and I was relentless, and it was a horrible experience, but we survived that potential takeover. And they wanted it for marketing, and my response to them was, "You're not using people's dead names to market your services." And so we became an official organization on World AIDS Day, December 1st, 1993. And my first board chair was a Catholic priest by the name of Father John Santillan.
That's beautiful. What was your relationship to HIV before 93, or how did you come to have this wonderful, powerful idea?
You know, I have been involved in my community since I was 15 years old. And so I was involved with the Catholic youth group, and then I worked for a member of the LA City Council. I got involved in politics. I worked in government. But I did that when I was in the closet.
Mm.
And those days, it was very difficult coming out, especially if you're Hispanic and Catholic. And so I eventually bottomed out from alcoholism. And at that time, my best friend shared with me that he was HIV positive. And I remember that face today, a very dreary face, a lost soul. He was shocked, subdued, didn't tell his family like forever. He was ashamed. And, being a recovering alcoholic, I said, I can't let my people like my best friend go through that experience. And so I committed to doing something and when I did that, I actually came out of the closet. And I said, well, I've helped so many people in my life. Now it's time to help my own gay brothers and sisters. And so it was a pretty big moment for me, but more important, I think, for the community, because I had no clue what was coming down the pike. All I knew was that I had a dream of building one wall panel that eventually became into a full-fledged monument. Then I said, how in the hell am I going to pay for it?
Yeah, I want to backtrack just a little bit before we get to the amazing story of how the wall came to be. Um, so to bond a little bit, I was involved in HIV for a long time, but through the world of art.
Mhm.
And and then I got kind of like burnt out, and I realized I needed what I would call a new language to talk about HIV. So I went to seminary. I went to Union Theological Seminary, and all of my friends were like, oh, what does the church have to do with AIDS? And that's such a scary place and they don't care about you. And I personally found it to be the absolute opposite. It was the first time in my adult life where I didn't have to be the one talking about HIV first. In part, it was because I went to a seminary where there was a lot of Black and brown people, a lot of queer people. And so HIV was not a taboo subject. It was part of their lives. And so that's my story, but I would love to hear from your point of view. What does the church teach us about memorialization? What does the Catholic Church maybe teach us about how to live and honor the dead? Because it seems like such a part of your story.
Well, I think as a Catholic as I am today, and being gay, I don't separate myself or my identity. It's part of who I am. But I think what the church has taught me in the past, we do memorialize people who have passed away and with the crucifixion, Good Friday, Easter. So there's a precedent set there. But I also see how not just religion, but culture plays a role into this. As a Hispanic, we're raised Catholic. Many don't practice, and many may not even be religious in nature to any particular religion, but they're still Catholic in culture. And so it was important for me. And then back in those days, the HIV/AIDS was taboo, and so was sexuality. People lived and died in the closet. And that was so painful for for the individuals who passed away, but also for the family members. And so, you know, it was important to take a stand in my own community and primarily in the east side of Los Angeles, which was Latino Hispanic community. Not necessarily a gay community, although we're all over the place. It was important to make a statement. And building a monument to people who died from AIDS was a huge statement back in the day. Um, but it also allowed us to bring together different folks, and we did it so well, people from labor, Latino celebrities in California, elected officials, people who normally wouldn't be around this issue, back in the day, they were there in 1994, 1995, and forward. And so it was more than just building a monument to people who died of AIDS. It was about building a movement
Mm.
for change, a movement for acceptance, a movement to discuss and be appreciative and be proud of who we are, no matter what. And so the monument stands today as a living project.
So I would love to get into the funding piece, but maybe before that, why don't you describe the space?
Well, today the monument looks fantastic. We dedicated in 2004. It's about 10,000 square feet. It's on public park land. It has 8 wall panels, 6 panels containing murals that depict life with AIDS, primarily in the Hispanic community. So you have sports and AIDS, you have women, you have gay men, children, and then you have 2 panels for enough space, about 8,000 spaces for names of people who died of AIDS. Um, and then it's a walkthrough. So you walk, it's kind of zigzag. Was the architect drew it under the looking at Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god of culture, which was, a
Mm.
serpent. And so it kind of zigzags. And at the end of the pathway is a huge, people call it the ribbon, but it's really a huge stainless steel arch. And so it comes around, and then at nighttime it's so beautiful because the arch is lit up with red LED lights and lush gardens. We renovated it once, and it just looks fantastic.
I thought it was a ribbon too. I thought it was like a half submerged ribbon, as if to say the living and the dead are together.
But see, this is really great because if you see that, it could be a AIDS ribbon, or it could be the outer ring of the Virgin de Guadalupe. So it depends on how you want to interpret it. Um, but it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
It's a beautiful spot. And if I'm not mistaken, is there like a sculpture in the shape of a couch or a seat?
Well, there used to be benches, but
Okay.
we took them away. It was renovated. So what we
Okay.
have at the AIDS Monument today, pretty much the same pathway, but we extended the walkway so you can walk behind the panels and get to the same place. Um, with no benches. Unfortunately, living in Los Angeles, benches are not recommended by rec and parks in the city of LA for a number of reasons, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, that's a different politic.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've hinted at this. I would love to hear the story of the funding because I think this is one of the key parts of the wall story.
You know, I'm kind of connected to community. As I mentioned, I started working in community when 15, 17, 18 years old. So I know all the players on the east side and in government. And so when I went around talking about building an AIDS monument, people didn't pay attention to me. And I went to the AIDS organizations and they poo-pooed the idea. And I had people calling up saying, why are you building an AIDS monument when we can use that money for treatment?
Hmm.
And to me, for Hispanic community, there was very little work being done in the English-speaking Hispanic community in Los Angeles around HIV back in the day. And so for me, it was acknowledging the fact that we have a pandemic here and that we needed to deal with it. But in order to deal with that, we had to deal with the issue of denial and secrets that we grow up with. And by building a monument that you can't really tear down, it was important for us to make that broad statement and bold statement to say we're not going away, so let's deal with it now. And it was very effective. So I reached out to traditional corporations that support AIDS causes, and we got nothing from them. A lot of your AIDS organizations in Los Angeles are on the west side, and they ate up a lot of this space, a lot of the air. Corporate says, we're already giving to this organization, we're giving to that organization. And so I said, okay, let's use our political contacts. So we did. And Assemblyman Gil Cedillo, back in the day when he was at the state assembly, said, I'm going to author this legislation, which was a member's request, and we'll get you $400,000. So we had a lobby, we had to work the state legislature and go to all different committees and explain ourselves, and took mothers who lost their children to AIDS, took men who lost their partners, went up and down the halls of the Capitol in Sacramento, and we got $400,000 from then Governor Gray Davis. And we got additional dollars from the California Endowment, and then also from the city of Los Angeles, and the monument's publicly funded. And that was dedicated on a cold night, World AIDS Day night, December 1st, 2004. The temperature dropped to 38 degrees at the time of the start of the ceremony. We had 1,500 people at the dedication. Um, and it was grand. It was powerful. Um, and so I think the most powerful piece of that night was cutting the ribbon and seeing a lot of men and also mothers going up to the names of people who had passed and rubbing their hand over the name of their loved one. And to me, that meant that we had succeeded in our goal, was to finally have a place where people can come without shame
Hmm.
and without fear of being called something, um, to be able to recognize their loved one. And then about 5 years ago, we renovated the monument, again, going back to government, to our friends in the County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Hilda Solis, and then back to the city councilman where Gil Cedillo was and Mayor Garcetti. And they completely funded the renovation project. Um, and so it's an incredible place to be, for those who passed away, but more so for those who are living.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing all of that. For me, the little bit of research I've been able to do and the visit that I was able to make one of the most powerful things for me in this story is that time between 93 and 2004. And I can't imagine the hard work that you and other people had to do. And and for me, the monument is undeniably beautiful, but there's something undeniably powerful about holding on to that work for over a decade. And I wonder if you can talk about even your personal reflection or your personal feeling about holding those names or holding that vision for that 11 years.
Um, well, this is a powerful question, and I'll try and answer it. How was it to hold? I think a lot of the work that we did early on, because what led us to building the monument in that period of time was a lot of the work in the community. So we had an incredible HIV prevention group called the Latino Men's Group, and very successful. We were working with 70 men a week in conversations. And of those 70 men, usually about 68 or 69 of those men would get tested for HIV every week, every 6 months, which was unheard of back in the day. But we also did a lot of organizing in community. And so we worked with, organized labor on a number of campaigns. We adopted an AIDS hospice in Tijuana, Mexico, where a lot of the men got items donated and took them down to Tijuana and visited with the patients there. And we did a lot of work around addressing hate against LGBTQ and harassment of gay bars in those days. So it was prevention work, including advocacy and organizing to create the awareness, but also creating a reputation of who we are. And so by building the monument and getting support from government, they were already aware of the good deeds that the Wall Las Memorias, had done. And so, it's really a great story that, I'm actually writing about right now. But it included a lot of small snippets of, we have the mothers of the wall who are Latina mothers who had lost their sons. And they came in almost every day to volunteer with the organization. They went out to be, the teachers, educators about HIV/AIDS and the reason why we have to build a monument. We brought in a Greek Orthodox priest on our board of directors because he lost his son to AIDS. And he started the first AIDS support group in the Greek Orthodox Church in the United States. It was called Philanthropia. And
Mm.
so we did a lot of groundbreaking things in LA and in California. Um, and it's pretty awesome, and when you're building the monument, you're so excited. You have this vision, you want to share it. And so we created some of the largest AIDS awareness events in California. We would do Strikeout AIDS at Dodger Stadium, 56,000 people there with a whole program on the field at Dodger Stadium, or testing the first ever professional Major League Soccer players in our offices and then holding the press conference telling people it's okay to get tested for HIV. So there was exciting times. Really excited because we were in contact with people. We were changing people's lives. At the same token, we were supporting the LGBTQ community conversation in the Hispanic community. So today it's no longer taboo, and we had a big role in changing the mindset of the folks in Los Angeles.
So your answer is really important, and I don't want to lose a thread here. So on the road to building the memorial, an organization was formed, and that organization became a service organization. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely right. A service and advocacy organization.
So tell me why, how, and I have to admit, I went to the wrong address. When I first went to visit the wall, I actually went to the center, and I was like, I don't see what I'm supposed to see here. But I'll say more about that after. But can you tell me how the service advocacy organization came to be?
Well, thank you for the question. A lot of people don't understand that, and maybe they're not supposed to. But I think this was something that just happened. When you're working with gay men and you want them to understand why we're building the monument, they have to look into their own lives. That means they need to make an investment in themselves and in the community in which they live. Hispanic gay men don't move out of their neighborhoods to go somewhere else
Mm.
necessarily to live. You know, some people do because they're afraid that their hometown will know that they're gay. So somewhat homophobia. We live in our communities or in our barrios, in our neighborhoods. And so we needed to come out in a way that was conducive to the community's mindset. And so when we would go out and we would conduct cleanup campaigns and be of good partners in community, it was a kind of a community relations effort, but it was more so very genuine. We really care about community. So we got to know the players and they got to know us. So we were building trust, you know, and as you're building trust, you're building community. Because when you need something, they're there. However, when they need something, you also have to be there. So as we went through that, we said, well, we're doing some great prevention work. So we started doing HIV prevention. And then a number of years later, we said, well, we should be doing testing. So we had to go through the whole realm and get qualified, and we started doing testing. But as we started to grow in years, we also saw, you know, the elements that contributed to HIV new infections. So we started doing work around substance use prevention, mental health. We're now doing mental health prevention. Soon we'll be doing mental health treatment and primarily taking care of that community that is at risk for new infections of HIV or STIs. And so it was a natural progression, but I don't think it was an accident. I think it was supposed to happen that way. It was a natural growth progression. Like someone who goes to school, goes to college and studies political science and law, and they don't know which way they're going to go, and eventually they become United States Supreme Court justice because they went through law. So it's a natural progression, and we treat the Wall Las Memorias like a member of the family.
Yeah, I teach a course about HIV memorialization, and when I teach about the wall, I say I think both arms of what you do are an act of memorialization. There's the place where you can go and touch the wall, but also you are carrying on the work of those who passed on, who died too early, but also the people living with HIV among us who want us to do this work. And so, do you see your services as an act of memorialization or as public memory work?
No, absolutely. It's a number of things. It's an HIV prevention. It's an also LGBTQ safe space. It's art. It's an art piece of art, but it's also storytelling and it's also about history.
Mhm.
You know, you know, life sometimes goes so fast. We are just getting out of the COVID pandemic. And while we were going through that, many people actually forgot about HIV because we're so preoccupied with COVID and rightfully so. But we cannot forever forget losing so many people to AIDS. And we have to talk about it. We have to remember those individuals who passed away, remember their stories and how they contributed to society and in the community. And it has to be living so that the younger generation realizes um, the impact that these heroes, what they did for our community. You know, I often say when I go out and I speak at meetings and conferences that I sometimes give a lot of credit to those who passed away, just like, you know, those who were in a war in World War II who passed away. They brought us freedom. The people who died in World War I and World War II brought us a sense of freedom and safety here in the country. Well, so did the people who died of AIDS. They
Mm.
were our war heroes. They brought us also a sense of freedom too, because I don't know if the world would have accepted us LGBT folks if we didn't have AIDS to begin with.
Mm.
I
One
think
of the
they were our martyrs.
Yeah. I mean, one of the really important pieces that I think you all do now is around substance use and sobriety. And that is often not talked about in relationship to HIV/AIDS. It's like HIV is already about sex and death. So there's already this big stuff to talk about. But what I like about your work is that it also talks about drug use and sobriety and recovery. And for you, is that how does drug use and recovery, the memorial piece, and your faith work together? Are they connected or are they separate?
Well, it's all connected. I think I look at my own life. I was an alcoholic. I did some drugs, but I was purely an alcoholic. And a lot of it, I drank to numb the pain. I also drank to hide my secrets. And I had a lot of secrets. You're growing up. It wasn't a gay-friendly atmosphere at the time, and I medicated myself. And so I learned through those days that, a lot of gay men primarily and a lot of women drink or use to deal with stuff that they can't deal with, or their shame, or the fact that they're living in a household where their parents may not accept them. And so I was very lucky to have gotten sober and to be able to have this dream of building a monument, not for me, but for everybody in the community. Um, and so there was no accident to that, and I thank God for that. And everything happens for a reason, but it's not my reason; it's His.
Mm. I would also love to hear. Um, sorry, that was very moving. I just need to take a second. Sorry. Um, one of the things that I study in my own work as well is the way that, as you've alluded to too, people's awareness and engagement with HIV/AIDS ebbs and flows over time. So in '93 and '94 to '96, there was lots of energy. And then I think this was true for me. Maybe it's different for you. In the early 2000s, there was less attention paid, and yet you had such a huge success in 2004 with the dedication. And I'm just wondering, have you found there has been an ebb and flow in people's attention to HIV/AIDS, specifically in relationship to memorialization?
No, I haven't. I don't. Haven't seen that here. I think what I have seen is a preoccupation. Obviously, COVID took a huge uh, piece out of our work, and the attention and the focus. Um, an example would be our commitment to community. So since we were founded on World AIDS Day, every World AIDS Day we have an evening called Noche de las Memorias, which is a free event. And the one year that we couldn't do it in public because of COVID, so our monuments and Lincoln Park, and so the parks closed down. And we were also and so when they closed down, we were also in the construction phase of the renovation. And so we the space was fenced off. And Park says you can't go there. We're not going to let you go there because of COVID. Okay. So what we did was uh, we did go there, and we cut through the fence, and we pre-recorded a lot of the program for that night, went virtually. And then what we did through Zoom was we held the event there in the cold night. There was 10 of us with lights and a camera and audio. And we took names and we carried our program through Zoom because we were not going to be stopped because of the city of Los Angeles or because of another pandemic. We were
Uh-huh.
going to do that because December 1st is World AIDS Day. And it's just as important to me and so many others as it is important for many of us to celebrate Christmas on December 25th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so we want to keep this in front of people's faces because many people, many family members, many members of our community who lost their lovers or their husbands during that period of time, they depend on us. They
Mm-hmm.
depend on that moment and they depend on that space. And so we do whatever we can to making sure that we keep our commitment, and we're open for business 31 years now on December 1st, and we'll continue to the future. And even after I'm gone.
Something that's remarkable to me too is like I'm calling from New York City. New York City's AIDS memorials came long after LA, after the wall. And now in LA, I don't know the latest, but I think there's another AIDS memorial being built in the west side.
Well, they're calling it the AIDS Monument. And
Monument, correct.
it's not a standing monument from what I understand. I'm still trying to understand it, but I think it's more stories of those lives and stories of people who passed away.
And so I'm wondering, do you feel, and you can call me out if this question seems petty. Do you feel that the wall gets enough attention or credit for how forward thinking and powerful and publicly funded it is? Do you think the story of the wall is told enough?
No, no, I don't think so. I think it's a great story. Um, there's a lot of backstories too, because before we got the final approval from the city, there was a group of folks that opposed us, homophobic stuff,
Oh wow.
and they forced the city to have an additional meetings. And our last meeting, which was horrible, back in 2003, 350 people in a meeting setting, and we had to be escorted out of the meeting by police because we had death threats, against us. And so um, we kept our focus, and we didn't back down, um, and we organized community. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll tell you a little story real quick if you don't mind. So
Please.
that meeting we were in was the neighborhood council. And in Los Angeles, there's like 90 neighborhood councils. And so you get elected to the neighborhood council by bringing as many people on election day for that neighborhood council, and whoever gets the most votes gets on the neighborhood council. So we had 3 folks that were anti-gay on that council. So we went, we had a big argument all night long, the pros against those who were against, and we got escorted out. But then a year and a half later, it was time to elect new people to the neighborhood council. So we're not just building a monument, we're building community, if you remember what I said.
Mm-hmm.
So we organized a slate to remove those folks, and we voted in 15 people who were sympathetic to us, they were accepting, but also who represented the entire community. So in other words, okay, we did what we had to do. Don't mess with us because we know what we're doing and we're coming back. We did it.
Yeah, earlier you said that you're writing about this. Does this mean you're writing about the period of 93 to 2004?
It's going to be the building of the monument, and it's going to start back then all the way to the present time. The impacts we've had, the challenges we had, the highlights. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm tracking correctly, there was that moment of euphoric idea. It was born into you, you gave birth. And then there was the attempt to have it taken over. There was the attempt to have it shut down by homophobes. And during this period, too, life saving medication comes. And so AIDS during this period goes from a death sentence to a chronic illness. And it just seems to me that that story is so important. And if you don't tell it, I worry. You have to like, if we're talking about the power of memory, this is your story you have to tell. Does that stress you out or does that excite you
It
or?
does stress me out. And my husband, I'm married now, big achievement in the last 31 years, but he reminds me all the time, you got to write your book, and I've been so preoccupied with the agency because we're growing so fast, we're doing so many great things, that I am committed, and I'm starting to do it over the holiday season.
Okay,
It will
good.
be told.
Okay. And part of this project is actually like we are at a point in the epidemic where, of course, people are still dying, people are still receiving new diagnosis, but we also have to name that so many good things have happened over the years. And if we don't tell those stories, then we're not going to leave our future generations with everything. We don't want to just leave them with sadness. We want to also leave them with the strategies.
Well, and thank you for the work that you're doing. And I think this is so important because what I also believe that this is part of our history that we need to document, we need to tell the history. Um, we're not out of the woods yet. And, I tell people that, we won't stop doing the work until we end HIV once and for all. But, in retrospect, I love reading about history, political history, going back to the 1900s. But I'm sure people want to read about what it took to fight AIDS and to also to create a space where we could remember those who passed away. Um, I think looking back at our AIDS monument that we have people there who were LA police officers. The Elizabeth Taylor Foundation put Rock Hudson's name on there. We
Mm.
have a Catholic priest on there. And so, and a lot of other folks. That's history. And you're not going to open it up on Wikipedia and read all about that. It's got to be told. And I think it's really important because we have to understand our past to know where we're going in the future. And we need to look at the past, the mistakes that we all made in society of the past, so we can correct it for the future.
Hmm. Maybe as a way of closing, I would love to hear what's like one to three lessons that you think that you have learned through your memory work that need to be told. And of course, don't scoop your book, but feel free to just try to think out loud with us.
What are one or two or three memory lessons?
Yeah, what is something that you've learned over your 30 plus years of doing this work that you think that people who are concerned with HIV, memory, history, and future can learn from you and from the wall?
Mm. One is what's really important, and I say this all the time to whatever group I'm speaking to, is be in touch with with your intuition, and never discount your dreams. Live your dreams completely. Two is learn also how to respect um, the chapters in one's life. Learn to respect the downs as well as the ups. How do we build upon the negativity that we may have experienced and create a positive? And three, lead a journey that is not selfish, a
Mm,
journey that's unselfish throughout your life, where you can contribute back to a community, to a movement, and also be thankful to those warriors who helped pave the movement that we live today.
mhm.
Um, I think that's what's really important because we're not in here alone. There's millions of us throughout the world, thousands across the country, um, and we have a lot of common bond, a lot of struggle, a lot of hate that we went through. But on the flip side, we from that hate we grew into love and acceptance and power. We can never lose that. If not, we have to build upon it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to say thank you for your work. I think this project is so important. Um, Storytelling, remembering those who passed away from this disease. This is international. The work that you're doing, the work that we're doing, and so many others, and in building places and spaces that people can remember those who passed away are extremely important. When I go to international AIDS conferences, the people can't believe that we have an AIDS monument, and so many other countries and places around the world have lost so many people, and they continue to lose people. And so this is just the start. But we got to work together to end the epidemic and to learn to love one another as we're brought into this world and as we pass through this world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Richard. I'm going to press stop record.
Thank you.